Good afternoon and welcome to another in the occasional series, Chip Chat. And with me today, I've got Grant from Over the Edge and Sully from, well, now, Yesterday's Tech. Say hello, guys.
Hello. Sorry, Joe, I'm not over the edge anymore, but carry on.
Oh, of course you're not. I keep doing that. Yeah. Sorry. It was me who went over the edge.
Yeah, long ago.
Stories for games, I should say. I ought to know. I was on a podcast with you yesterday. Anyway, what we're going to talk about this afternoon is the console launches, and we're going to go through and we're going to cover Sony's pre-order debacle, which happened this week, the launch lineups for the various consoles, prices as well, which will dovetail into that, the services that they're going to have to offer, and then we're going to go into predictions for the Xbox launch next week. And although I think maybe they should have held them off and launched them next year, but that's another question. And who will sell better this Christmas and maybe later on down the line as well, looking maybe 2 years and 5 years in the future, if we have time for that. But first off, Sony and their launch yesterday. Who wants to start on that? Well, yesterday, this week, a couple of days ago.
Shotgun, not.
Okay, I'll try and go first and see what I can come up with. So, right, Sony, of course, they did their latest state of play, which was on Wednesday, where they showcased a little bit more of upcoming games, and then we got a couple of new announcements like Final Fantasy 16. I think that was a good start to that in terms of kicking it off. I think that was a good move
Sony
to
bread and butter.
showcase. Yeah, it's kind of like Final Fantasy has kind of been associated with PlayStation for ever since 7 was, the big. In terms of popularity, 7 was what sort of made the series big in the West, and so getting Final Fantasy 16 as a console exclusive, because it's on PC as well, I think that was good. Also, for me personally, I thought the highlights were that Spider-Man looked fairly good, although I had some reservations about Spider-Man. I thought when I was watching the combat, do you know what? I think this is a little bit too flashy. The combat, because
somebody else said that. They said you can't see what you're doing on this one.
I thought it was a little bit over the top, because one thing I really liked about the Spider-Man PS4 game was that the combat was quite fluid, and you could see exactly what was going on and what skills you were using at any particular point. And I think what I saw from the Miles Morales one was some of the new abilities looked good, but some of them just looked like they were just for the spectacle. As much as anything else.
We'll find that out when it comes, I suppose. But still looking forward to it. I agree. I think it did look looks a bit busy at times.
It was a little bit too busy. The other thing I liked to look of was Demon's Souls. Whether I'll actually play it, I certainly won't finish it, because I never do with those sort of games, because they're too bloody hard. I thought generally it was good. The price reveal, and of course we can talk about that as well, but it was around what I expected it to be, I think. It wasn't too much of a surprise, but I'm thinking that maybe they adjusted it after what Microsoft announced. I don't think...
Oh, well, they said they didn't.
I don't know,
they must
though.
not have done.
I don't know. I don't know if that's true.
Well, I think if they adjusted it, it was probably like $50 on the digital one, right?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Maybe it wasn't by much, but I'm thinking they wanted to go more expensive, and the rumours were that I think they did. But
I think they were looking at 600 maybe.
Yeah, I think they were looking at 599 maybe for the.
Yeah, this is dollars. Incidentally, we discussed this beforehand, everybody, and we're gonna talk in dollars. Okay. Because if we keep it just one currency, it makes it easier for everyone to follow, and you can look it up and see what the difference is in your region. So
what do you guys?
Yeah. But generally, I thought. No, carry on.
Sorry, Joe, I've lost track of our subjects already. But on pricing, I think we're discussing that next anyway, weren't we?
That's fine. Yeah, go into that.
Yeah, pricing wise, I think we kind of expected, once one established the price of the premium model, the other one would just follow suit. But for the all digital version of the PlayStation 5, I feel like it. How cheap could they possibly sell that, and is selling it cheap necessarily good for them? Because if it's essentially exactly the same box without a disk drive. So if it becomes radically cheaper and that becomes the one you start selling like actual hotcakes, and your premium one doesn't sell because all you get with it is a disk tray and it costs $150 or $200 more, that to me doesn't seem like a good position to be in. because you're just selling hotcakes and making a loss.
I don't think they can afford to make a loss.
No
like
way.
that.
I would say one thing about that. A lot of people, especially in the UK, were saying, "Oh, come on, like £100 for like a disc drive," but it is a 4K Blu-ray player.
Oh, I don't disagree.
I
don't disagree.
Yeah, I mean, I think judging by what happened with Amazon, this is particularly in the UK. Okay, so Amazon announced that the pre-orders would go. I don't want to jump ahead too much, but there is a point I'm trying to make, which is the Amazon put the pre-orders up at 9 a.m. And I looked on the page out of curiosity about 20 past 9. The only thing left was the disc drive version. I think in the UK, and I don't know whether this is going to be worldwide, the digital version is proving to be quite popular.
Yeah.
And more popular than the one with the disc drive, because obviously people with fast internet will think, well, I can just get the digital version.
I saw a few people said that the digital version sold out quicker than the physical version.
Well, if you think about it,
yeah,
it's a good value, isn't it? Because it's the same spec, and it's a good spec machine that you're getting for the price.
Yeah.
Can I talk about this for a second?
Yeah.
This idea with the price, because we touched on that just a minute ago, and there's something interesting there for me. This thing about it's a rip off. The one with the disc drive is a rip off, and all the rest of it. And I kind of agree with you, Grant, but I come at it from the other end.
Yeah.
I think that the one with the disc drive is a fair price.
Yeah.
And the digital one is a bloody good deal.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. I see what you mean.
And I think you said that, actually. You might have said something like that on Discord. And I don't think the prices of the two PlayStations are unfair at all. I think they're about what I would have hoped for. I think a lot of us thought maybe it might be a bit more. We might be looking at, going up towards 600, maybe 500 for the digital. And so it's actually a pleasant surprise for me to see them coming in at these price points. And I don't think they're a bad price at all for a new console launch. Certainly not with the power that's on offer.
Oh, no,
I don't think there's ever been better options at launch. We have 4 systems and all of them are priced differently and offer different things too.
Yeah, they are. I think I agree. They're priced very fairly. And one thing I think to bear in mind is that Sony obviously didn't want to go for $599 when you think about that was the price for the PS3, and look what happened with that at launch. People looked at it and go, no, way too expensive. And they could have charged $599 for the current console. When you consider the tech in it, it wouldn't have been that unreasonable. But I don't think with the current situation as well in the world that it would have been right for them to charge any more than they have. So I think $499 is bang on the money, and that goes for the Xbox as well. I think.
I agree. I agree with what Sully said just a minute ago. I think if you look at all the price points of all the different consoles, and I know some people have got an issue with the Xbox Series S, but I think if you look at all of them, what they offer and what they cost is right for what they offer, and I think actually they're all a pretty decent deal. I don't think any of those consoles you would look at and go, oh bloody hell, that's a rip off. I know some people were trying to say that the Xbox Series S was a rip off. I don't think it is.
I don't think it is.
If you actually look, they're being upfront about what's on offer. Yeah. They're not saying, oh, this is going to do 4K. They're telling you what's on offer. They're giving you a price. It's built to that price.
In what scenario is the S a rip off?
Yeah, this is what I don't get. I think the worst take that I heard was from Boogie, who completely didn't understand the point of the S. He just, it was like how much more could you be wrong about interpreting the point of that console? It was clearly marketed as a 1440p console where you could play games up to 60 FPS and possibly more, and it's an option for people that can't afford the more expensive one.
I've heard,
and somebody who's a bit more casual, who just wants to dip his toe in during the weekend and have a game of something. It's a perfect entry point for somebody in that position, and I really don't see it as a rip off at all. I understand from my point of view, from you guys' point of view, it's probably like, well, I'm not going to touch that. I said to you, I wouldn't touch that with yours, Grant.
Yeah.
But that's not because I think it's a bad console. I just don't think it's the console for me.
Yeah, I'm the same. But I get who it's marketed at.
Yeah, I think I'll definitely be picking one up, an S and an X. I think my girlfriend will probably use the S and I'll use the X. But I think a lot of the misconception regarding the S in comparison to performance and price and previous generations being the Xbox One X, and what's more powerful, and is it just a pointless, blatant rip-off console that they're flogging as next gen? I think this misconception surrounding compute power and that teraflops of compute power number. Because on paper,
Absolutely.
when you look at teraflops, it's a smaller value, but you're not factoring in that it has next-gen CPU features and GPU features, and hardware becomes more efficient. It's like saying that a V8 engine built, 30 years ago is going to have the same efficiency as a V8 engine built today.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there. But
a DB6 might look lovely, but it's not going to go as fast as a modern sports car.
I think the only issue...
Sorry, Grant, go on.
No, carry on. So I was going to say the only issue Microsoft might have, and I think it's valid, is that if you look at it from the point of view... I think the S is very clearly aimed at people that maybe don't know a lot about what the current upcoming consoles are about in terms of the tech, but they see that they can buy a console for $299, which they might be able to maybe buy for, say, like a kid who gets a chance to play a next-gen console, just not at the power of like one of the other ones. So I think those sort of people might not care about how many T-flops it's got, and I think personally there's way too much emphasis on that anyway, because all of a sudden this gen it's all about T-flops when no one was even talking about them previous generations. But I kind of get that. I get that the enthusiasts will just go for the most powerful X, and I said this to Joel. I was looking at the Xbox Series X spec, and I thought I spent around £1,300 on my PC, maybe I don't know, about $1,700, and it's not as good as the spec in the Xbox Series X for $499. So that's why. It's an incredible deal. It's an incredible deal, the Xbox Series X and the PS5, for the tech that you get.
I agree, absolutely. Again, I'll go back to that. I think each of those consoles hits a price point, and I think what they give you at that price is a very, very good deal. Yeah. I don't think there's a problem with the hardware at all on that front. And unless you've got something else to add to that, though, Sully, I just want to just talk about going on from the price. This thing about with the pre-order, though, because while I think the price was fair for the PlayStation 5, both versions, and I think some of the stuff we saw in that, whatever they call it, the PlayStation, their digital thing, I think the actual pre-orders themselves were well, I've written it down here. I said it was a debacle. And I thought they got that really badly wrong. And one of you guys, I'm sorry, I can't remember which one of you guys said before we started. What didn't they say that they would let us know when they went live? And they absolutely did. They said, we will give you plenty of heads up. We will let you know when we're going to let the pre-orders go live. And then before we knew where we were hit with pre-orders. I was like, oh, they're live. I woke up in the morning and the pre-orders were already bloody live. And it was insane. And I tried to get an Xbox. Sorry, an Xbox. That would have been a problem. I tried to get a PlayStation 5 disc version, and everyone was out of stock. Everybody, by the time I got there. Fortunately enough, I actually went to, I think, Eurogamer's page, and they had a list of people who had them in stock. And I was clicking on the ones that were supposed to be in stock, and they were all out of stock. And in the end, I started clicking on the ones that were supposed to be out of stock, and I actually found one in stock at Game, or at least they were offering a pre-order at Game. And so I pre-ordered it at Game. So as it stands at the moment, I've actually got a pre-order in for a PlayStation 5 with a disc.
Yeah, well done. Yeah, that's... what were you going to say, Sully? I know you wanted to say something.
I was going to just really quickly tack on, and Joel, I've got a point on this as well, regarding the Series S, and that was just how Microsoft have clearly done their research with who they're targeting and their price point, because it's a 1440p/1080p machine, and 80% of Steam users still play in 1080p.
Yeah, I was saying that to Jay the other day. Actually, it's like most people play in 1080p, and the most popular graphics card is a 1060. Yeah. So that's quite telling, isn't it?
There you go.
So they know what they're doing in this regard.
And PC gamers are probably spending more money on average than console gamers. So do we think console gamers are rolling in 4K, 8K OLED TVs? Probably not.
No.
So I think
most
they've
people haven't
done
got a 4K
research.
TV.
And
yeah.
No, I don't. I've got a 1440p ultra-wide Samsung. That's it, and it's a budget one.
Yeah.
I mean, again, just promise I'm going to move on to the pre-orders in a sec, but I mean, I remember years ago Phil said they wouldn't be beat on power and performance and price point, and I think they've delivered that already with this console.
I agree.
Yeah.
Sorry, Joe, I'm sorry to backtrack it, but onto the pre-order kind of
that's fine.
debacle, I guess we'll call it. I think it's smart by Sony to basically pull the pin on the grenade and just throw it, because what are we all doing? We're all talking about Sony and PS5 and supply and demand, and it's selling out like hotcakes.
True, I suppose. And somebody else had another take on this, and I mentioned this to Grant before we started, that somebody was saying that if you look at what happened with NVIDIA yesterday, they actually did give us a date and a time, and so all the bots were waiting, and when it went live, all the scalpers were in there, and people were saying, I bought 40 of these, I bought 30 of these. People are boasting about them, and ordinary people couldn't get in and couldn't buy one. I went to about 5 of the different tech sites, and they were literally crashed all day.
Yeah, I mean, I had a look myself. I wasn't looking to buy, but some of the sites, you were literally waiting. I mean, I've got a fibre connection, you're waiting 4 to 5 minutes just to load a page. So it was crazy. NVIDIA knew exactly what they were doing. I mean, yes, bots is a fact. I mean, as much as they say they're going to try and manually check each order, I think NVIDIA said that about theirs. But I mean, I think Sony themselves wanted to avoid, people buying them and reselling. But you can't really. I mean, no. I said to you, Joe, somebody paid £20,000 for a 3080 graphics card on eBay.
Oh, it's just ridiculous. and some of the prices for the PlayStation 5 on eBay as well, they're insane.
Yeah, they're crazy.
And I mean, you're like, look, wait a couple of months, you'll be able to pick one up.
Yeah, this is my attitude. I do want a PS5, but I'm not going to break my neck to get one.
No.
I'm not.
No.
Not at all.
Especially as and we'll move on to this a bit more in a minute. I know you've covered a little bit about that already, Grant, but especially as if you look at the launch lineup, and I know people were saying, the Xbox hasn't got much of a launch lineup, and I made a video about this months ago saying neither of these consoles are going to have much at launch.
That's right.
And the reality is that's always the case. Yeah. Most consoles when they launch don't have much, unless there's a particular game that you particularly want. Like, I mean, with the Switch where they had Zelda. I mean, even there they only really had Zelda at launch that was anything to write home about. And it's always the same at launch. I mean, and we've gone over this time and time again, that when the PlayStation 4 came out, it had virtually nothing on it for the first 2 years.
I mean, this is quite interesting, actually. A lot of people, I don't know if maybe sort of certain generations don't realise this because they weren't aware of other console launches, but I remember if you go further back, say to the PS2 release, they actually had a lot more games available at launch than current gen. I think with each gen there seems to be fewer games available at launch. I mean, I've said this before, but it's relevant, so I'm mentioning it. It's basically I've only ever bought 2 consoles at launch. One was the Dreamcast and the other was the Wii. Now the Dreamcast, was supposed to have arrived in the UK in about 3 months after the US launch and the Japanese launch. What happened was it's actually probably the worst console launch in the history of any. It's probably a big reason why Sega failed with that console, because not only did they mess up in terms of the amount of games that were supposed to be available. There were supposed to be 12 games at launch. We got 6 games and half of the allocation that they said would be available. So my pre-order couldn't be fulfilled literally until I think it was fulfilled about a week before Christmas. So, and I was lucky to get that, and I pre-ordered it with 2 games and I only got one of them. Yeah. So there is a history of console launches not going well, but what we've got now is we've only got, effectively, I think with the PS5, we've got about 5 games available at launch. And so neither of them, like you say, have anything great in terms of appealing, like launch lineups. To me personally, I think other people maybe will look at it and think, that'll do me. And we've also got a price increase on games as well to contend with.
Yeah, I mean, Sony are the first system holder, if you like, to actually announce that they're going to up the price, aren't they? So the games are going to be 70 as opposed to 60 this time around.
Yeah.
And I was looking at some of the games, and they're actually going at, they're being put up for pre-order £70. So if you're talking $70, it looks like it's a direct comparison across.
Yeah, I think,
which surprised me actually. I thought we'd maybe see £65, but no, it looks like some of them. Yeah. Spider-Man's a bit cheaper, but then again, it's a smaller game. But here's the other thing as well that goes in with this is that, and I think Sony messed up here as well. The fact that they were telling us absolutely categorically, that Spider-Man's not coming to the PlayStation 4.
Yeah, that's right.
Horizon Forbidden West isn't coming to the PlayStation 4. And now, lo and behold, and I said this at the time, I was saying, look, there's absolutely no reason why Spider-Man specifically can't come to the PlayStation 4. And people were saying, oh, it won't work because it'll only work with the new SSD and all this stuff. No, it won't. It's
rubbish.
Fine. It can work. And now, lo and behold, we've got, these games are available. And I think it's a good move by Sony. I agree with you. I think you said this on Discord. Sony would be stupid not to make these games available to the PS4 because they've got the bigger install base. Yeah, and what the hell does it hurt you if you're buying a PlayStation 5 and you want the game on the PlayStation 5 that it's coming on the PlayStation 4? It's that same old argument again, isn't it? And I had this argument with people about the Xbox. It wasn't a problem on the Xbox. It isn't a problem on the PlayStation. Yeah. The only issue for me is, and I think Microsoft have changed the narrative a little bit on this one, that with Microsoft, if you buy the game on the Xbox One and then you go and buy it on the Xbox Series, and then you want to play it on the Xbox Series S on the Xbox Series X, God, these names, when that comes out, or when you can get hold of one, you just put the game in there, or you use the digital version in there, and you can carry on playing, and it'll give you the better assets, and you don't have to pay any extra money.
Yeah, that's good.
And so I think Sony, when they announced it was coming to the PlayStation 4, they should have said, and also, it'll have a kind of their version of smart delivery, and that would have made it taste a little bit better to me. And I think they've missed a trick there. And okay, I know they might think, oh, we'll make a bit of extra money, but how much more extra money? And I think it's actually worth the good feels that they get from fans and people. And it would also make people more inclined to, people who are sitting on the fence, they'd be more inclined to think, oh, well, I'll get a PlayStation down the line. Not that I think they've got a big problem with that anyway. I think they'll sell like hotcakes, but,
Isn't it interesting how the conditioning seems to have changed between Sony consumers, I guess fans, and Xbox consumers and fans? Because, a cross-gen game being available on both systems or not being exclusive to one or the other would not be a big deal in the Microsoft or Xbox ecosystem. Yet a game being playable between generations and launching on two consoles on a Sony platform is the end of the world, and so are exclusives going to the PC.
Yeah. I think it's because Sony fans just they're used to Sony having a certain policy, and then all of a sudden, I think Sony confused the message a bit when they said, "Oh, we believe in generations." In other words, they want people to. They obviously want people to jump to PS5, but they're conscious of the fact they've got this 100 million install base on PS4, and it's no different from previous generations when you've had this cross-platform where you've got companies, effectively aiming at two consoles because of the fact that you've got this natural crossover.
Yeah, exactly.
So until there's an install base with the new console, it makes perfect sense from a financial perspective. Yeah. It's just that Sony are clouding things by saying one thing in their marketing, and then
no, I completely agree. In that sense.
No, this is on PS4. Yeah.
And I mean, and back to the pre-order thing as well, is like, I agree. Like, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to create a frenzy and a panic surrounding their new products selling out. But yes, the messaging wasn't great because they did state that they were going to give people heads up. Yeah. And just one little tidbit that I thought was interesting as well regarding Microsoft's Xbox Series X launch and there being nothing to play other than Game Pass and blah, blah, blah. I would be interested to see the numbers regarding how many titles are actually playable on the Series X day one through backwards compatibility and Game Pass versus every other console release ever. Because Microsoft have a very large catalog now of Xbox games, backwards compat and Game Pass that will be playable on the Series X. So, say that there's nothing to play isn't true. There's no killer brand new app to play day one.
There's
but
no
how
exclusive
often,
is what.
Yes. I mean, there's plenty of exclusives.
Well, the thing is that I think it's dependent on whether if you're a new adopter to Xbox, say for instance one of the new Xbox consoles was your first Xbox, there's going to be, to put it bluntly, fucking loads of games for you to play. So you're going to have a huge, like you say, huge catalogue of backwards compatible games. But it's a case of how
for
many.
Me, that's quite attractive. for me, that's quite attractive because I've got a big catalogue of
Yeah.
Xbox games and I can buy this new console and I can play them on the new console. I ain't got to think about it. I ain't got to worry about it. I ain't got that confused messaging of, oh, some of them will work, most of them will work, 90% of them will work. How many will work? Which game? Look, just be upfront about it and tell us. Microsoft have been upfront. They've told us they're all going to work.
Well,
you'll have some glitches, I'm sure, but basically anything that works on the Xbox One X, Xbox One S is going to work on the Xbox Series S and Series X. Okay, with the Series S, it's not going to have the improved assets in the same way that it will on the Xbox Series X, and that might be a problem for some people, but if that's a problem, get the X,
and I guarantee
it's not a rocket science, is it?
No, and I guarantee there will be more titles playable as a whole on the Series X than there will be the PS5.
Oh yeah, I think with PS5, what did people make of that PlayStation Plus collection? Because at first when I saw that, I thought, is this their answer to Game Pass? But it's not. It's just. But interestingly, what they said, they've called it the PlayStation Plus collection. But have you noticed we haven't had anything about what this is going to cost? And I have a feeling this is going to be part of a premium PS Plus. They're going to increase the price or offer a different tier of PlayStation Plus.
Will they have to make?
I suspect you might be right.
I think Sony would be scrambling to find hooks for services at the moment because they haven't got any services.
Yeah.
They would be absolutely scrambling to put together packages just to sell people. But to me, I think sounds
it's part
really strange branding, PlayStation Plus collection, because it sounds like a collection of games. And the only thing that sounds like to me is maybe they're giving every single free PlayStation Plus game that was released over the PS4 in a collection or something. Like, how many games is that? That's what it sounds like to me. That sounds ridiculous.
It's actually 18 games. I've got the list of the ones they're offering here.
It was a little bit confusing because the very first time I saw it, I thought, what is this? PlayStation Plus
collection
version.
It sounds like
Game
a
Pass.
library of games.
It's a library of games that it says you can download at launch on the PS5.
So
but is
PlayStation Plus,
is it dependent upon something?
PlayStation Plus is a tier of PlayStation Online, right? And you get free games with it. So are they just taking that PlayStation Plus model and saying this is the PlayStation Plus collection, which could equate to Game Pass, right? Like the collection of Plus
they're saying
games.
it's not Game Pass. Okay.
Yeah.
There's a few articles that have been written by different websites on the PlayStation Plus collection on Twitter. I haven't read them yet, but they're very specific about this, Sony. It's not an answer to Game Pass, but what they haven't said is whether it's part of like a higher tier of PlayStation Plus. So I have a feeling that if you want that collection on PS5, you might have to pay a little bit extra in terms of PlayStation Plus. So maybe they'll have a standard PS Plus that everyone pays, and maybe there'll be a higher tier if you want that collection, because they haven't said, Sony, whether it's going to cost any more yet being the operative word.
I bloody well hope not, for our sake as consumers, but also for their sake as well, because if they add an extra price onto this for these games, and they are a good set of games, I'm looking at them here, and there's some bloody good games in it, some real bangers in this collection.
A lot of their exclusives are in there, basically, aren't they?
But if they but if they turn around and say, oh, you're going to have to pay an extra so much a month in order to get these, who's that going to appeal to? And if you compare it against what Microsoft are offering, and especially when you factor in, and we haven't touched on this yet, but I'm going to mention it now, with this monthly price that you can pay, that's what, 28 quid a month or whatever to get the Xbox One X and
it's about
Game Pass.
I don't know.
And you get Game Pass Ultimate as well, so you've got it on PC, you've got it on your phone.
Are you talking about All Access?
Say again,
Are
sorry?
you talking about their All Access program?
Yeah, it's All Access. Yeah, it's the financing for the Xbox.
Oh, that shit is fucking ridiculous in the best possible way.
Yeah,
like there's no interest.
Yeah,
they're not making money.
Yeah.
They just want to give you a fucking
It actually works out cheaper to do it that way than to buy the Xbox outright and get Game Pass.
Yes, I am tempted to do it, even though I can buy them outright, because I want free Game Pass.
Yeah, so am I, actually. I was looking at that and thinking, yeah, you're right. It's no interest. It's effectively like a mobile phone contract, and I think it's probably similar in terms of you have to qualify in a similar way. So it's not going to be like, maybe one finance option where it might be more difficult to get finance for it. I think it's probably the same model that's being applied to like mobile phone contract.
Okay, here's an interesting thought.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good deal.
here's an interesting thought, right? Because it seems like an incredible deal, right? And obviously they want to hook people into their ecosystem so that they're removing the wall of entry because they're making it easy for you to get a box, right, that you just pay off monthly. But do they also view this as an opportunity to perhaps release new hardware every 2 years, like phones? So your contract is paid
it's possible,
out.
Isn't it?
Your contract is paid out. You know, everybody that got the all access contract, they've spent 2 years. The new box drops. You've just paid off the old box, but now you jump straight into the next box and you start that 2-year cycle again.
Well, it's lightweight, but you get to keep it at the end of the 2-year contract.
I mean, it's still interest free.
Same with.
But the point is, they're double dipping us in generations now. They're making it so easy for you to get the next box that you just do it, because why wouldn't you want, you know?
I'm going to predict right here, right now, we'll see a mid-season refresh.
No, I think you're both absolutely spot on. I think this is what's going to happen. I think it's quite possible it leaves Microsoft in a position where they can drop a slightly higher tier Xbox, because effectively that's what they've done already anyway, haven't they?
Yeah. Well, I mean, this generation,
we've sort of.
Sorry, Grant, No, this generation could have just been the test bed for like a mid-gen refresh, and now they're going to go, like, maybe they'll drop 3 boxes in the next 10 years, or 4 boxes in the next 10 years. But, you know, to me, All Access is so generous, and I get why. It is. Because they want you to get plugged into Game Pass and Xbox Live and to get on that subscription model, because, let's be honest, that's the future and the delivery of games going forward. But it also leaves the door wide open for, like we just covered, to make it so easy to get the new box and so affordable that we can get new boxes every 2 years.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. I mean, it appeals to me because you get Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, so you get the PC and the console version. I've got a PC. I can very, very seamlessly get an Xbox for £28 a month, which saves me money, allows me to play Xbox on PC, on console, and have a brand new Xbox.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
It's incredibly tempting to actually, and I'm seriously looking at it as a way of getting an Xbox, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Well, honestly, if I didn't already have Game Pass Ultimate because they had that stupid deal a year or so ago where you could convert your current subscriptions to Game Pass Ultimate, and I did that, and I spent about 30 or 40 quid or something. I got Game Pass Ultimate for 2 bloody years, you know. For next to nothing.
I remember that deal, and I should point out, I don't know if people are aware of this, but Xbox Game Pass for PC is, and I don't know if this is the same for console, is going to go up from $5 to $10 a month pretty soon. So they are.
That's the thing. They hook you in.
They are increasing the price.
And I said this years ago, about 12 months ago, 9 months ago. That was my worry then, that they'll hook you in and then slowly, especially if they get market dominance, which, let's be honest, they might be going, oh, we're all friendly with Sony, but it's all good to have competition. Yeah, right, until you're dominant, right? Because once they get dominant, you could see that happening. You could see the prices start to ramp up, and then, they get a little bit greedy. And we've seen it time and time again. We've seen it with Sony before. We've seen it with Microsoft before. And then they become less consumer focused, and they think, oh, we can make an extra few quid here. Yeah, well, and I can see that happening, and that's a concern.
I would say though, even at $10, which I think is going to be £7.99 a month, it still represents a good value when you consider how many games you get, like on the service. So I take what you're saying, but I still think Game Pass represents incredible value. I mean, obviously, it's great value if you paid for ultimate offer, which was available, was incredible. But the point is, with the new console, all in Game Pass Ultimate plus the console, it's an incredible deal all round.
It's a bloody no-brainer, isn't it? Really, let's be honest.
What is the roof for Game Pass, do you think, that they can get away with?
Depends how many games are on it, I would say. A lot, I mean, okay, there will be a ceiling. Okay. No matter what you put on it, there will be a ceiling. But I think the ceiling will change depending on what's on offer.
And what kind of game you are.
I think if Microsoft start putting out, say again, Sully?
I think what kind of gamer you are will dictate the price too, for any given individual. So absolutely, you have to cater to the lowest common denominator, which is your casual audience being your largest audience, and you want to capture as much of that as possible. So, you can't exactly say $40 a month is reasonable. If you play one game a month, then the value is still there regardless. But for casual gamers, they're not playing one game a month.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I think the most valuable thing that hooked me in with Game Pass was the fact that you're going to get every single exclusive day one.
Yeah.
So if you don't want to pay $60 for a game, you have the opportunity to still play that game, but you're effectively renting it via a digital platform.
And
for the time that you pay for that service.
Let's be real, like even if Microsoft released one $70 dollar freaking exclusive a year, the service is still break even, right? Like it's pretty close to breaking even at the moment.
I think they said it's like is it so if you paid for a year of Game Pass, you're still getting more value if they release, say, X number of exclusives a year. It represents better value than if you'd have bought them outright.
Yeah.
You know?
So at the moment, it is ridiculous.
Except obviously you don't own them, but then do we anyway these days?
Yes, exactly. I think what it is, it's Microsoft saying, well, if people can't afford to buy 60, and of course this is going to be relevant because if games are going up to $70, it makes Game Pass look even more attractive because you're getting to play
for Microsoft.
You know. Yeah, and I think they're trying to sign up even more companies to Game Pass so that they can get as wide a range and attract as many different type of gamers as possible to the service. Because I think what you're saying is relevant. What type of gamer you are. Yeah, and EA Play makes it even better. Yeah.
Even if you hate EA, I mean, whether you like EA or not, they still do have some good games, you know.
Well, I mean, like, you can still rent.
Sorry, Grant, go on.
No, I was going to say you can still rent the EA Play thing. Does allow you to try out EA's new releases for up to 10 hours, and I think that's important as well because it will give you, maybe the opportunity to check out new titles again as part of that service.
Yeah.
What do you guys think about the kind of thought, and it might even be a rumor, of dissolving Xbox Live and just giving the only subscription just basically Xbox Ultimate? So if you buy an Xbox and you want to play online, you have to sign up for Xbox Ultimate, and with that you just get 100 fucking games. Like that's the bonus. So it's just Xbox Live with 100 games attached.
Wow. I mean,
is that a power play? Is that like? Does that?
I think that might be a hard sell. I think for me it wouldn't bother me too much because I'm signed up to it anyway. So what difference does it make to me? But you know what gamers are like? They get pissy about the tiniest little things.
But is it a hard sell? Isn't it only like a massive win for a consumer? Because if you're buying an Xbox, chances are you're going to get Xbox Live anyway, right? Yeah. And by chances...
Oh, no, I agree. And I think people would get pissy about it, and I think they'd soon forget about it as well. I think within 6 months, everyone had forgotten about it and moved on. And I think so. When I say it'd be a hard sell, initially, I think it'd be a hard sell. But I don't think it would last. I think people would just go, yeah, whatever. If it's a reasonable price, what's the problem?
Well, yeah, I think it'd be interesting to see how many people go for that all-access option when buying the Xbox. I have a feeling it's going to be really popular.
So
I do.
I
think it's the right time for it as well, given the financial constraints a lot of people are under.
I mean, I don't know what the market share in general is, but I think the last time Xbox and Microsoft, they don't release sales figures in terms of how many consoles they sold anymore. But what they did say is they've got something like 14 million Game Pass subscriptions. And I think that was the end of last year they said that. So it'd be interesting to see how many subs they get and how big the service grows. Because I think that counts as console and PC subscriptions. So,
well, I think if you're going into a shop or whatever and you're looking at a PlayStation 5 and you're on the fence and you're looking at a PlayStation 5 which is costing you $500, and then you're looking at 2 or 3 games at £70 each, $70 each, right? That's a big outlay.
Yeah, so
and then you're looking at the Xbox, and it's £28 a month, and you've got all the games you can bloody possibly want.
It is interesting, isn't it? Yeah, it's very different. They're approaching things very differently. Sony are going for the traditional model, saying here's our box and here are our games, and Microsoft are saying, yeah, but what if you can't afford that? Here's another option.
And what if we release a new console every 2 years and we make it easy for people to get?
Yeah.
Where does that leave Sony?
Microsoft become...
Like, Sony's fucked.
Well, Sony have not... Yeah, they haven't got a service, like you say, to compete.
Well, certainly this PlayStation Plus collection can't... I mean, 18 games isn't going to...
It's not going to compete with 100 odd PC games on Game Pass and even more on console.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think you're right, Sully. I think Sony could find themselves struggling. I think their big thing will always be that they've got these great exclusives coming online, and even now, in the run up to launch, we're seeing they got Demon Souls and whatnot. It was a bit of a shot in their own foot when they announcing after the fact that Miles Morales was coming to PlayStation 4 as well.
Yeah.
Even though it was obvious, and I know I've talked about that already. But that's their big thing, is they've got these great games, and no one's going to question the fact, or very few people, unless you're a rabid Microsoft fanboy. Nobody's going to question the fact that Sony have had the better exclusives this generation. When it gets really interesting, though, is down the line when we start seeing more of Sony's exclusives coming online for this new generation coming, and we see Xbox's new games coming online, because I know people are saying, Microsoft has no games, Xbox has no games, but they didn't buy these. I've said this before. They didn't buy these studios just because they wanted an acquisition.
Yeah.
Microsoft don't buy. I mean, I know they mess stuff up and they buy things, and these things go by the wayside. But so do a lot of these companies. It's like a scattergun approach. Oh, that looks interesting. This might make us some money. Let's buy that. Or this might give us a new bit of tech. Sometimes they buy a company because they're not interested in the company in itself. They're interested in a bit of software or a bit of tech they've got.
Yeah,
that's what these big companies do.
Yeah.
All the people. Yeah,
exactly.
Or they've got some expertise that they want. And that's what they do. They work in a different way to the way gamers think. Gamers don't think in the same way that the companies are thinking. And I look at Microsoft and I think, they're looking to put good games out. Of course they're looking to put games out. Whether they can compete game for game with Sony in the next few years, I can't say. But they only have to put out a few games that are good and do get people's attention and do keep people interested. They've got all the services. They've got the hardware. The only thing they haven't got to compete with Sony are the games. And if they can compete on games, then that makes the PlayStation, for other than the people who are invested in PlayStation in a big way, anyone who's on the fence, and we're talking about the casual gamers here, the people, the big market, that's the biggest market. They're the people that Microsoft are going after.
I think,
and I'm not sure.
I think it could be interesting. Sorry, just as you draw EJ. I think it could go either one of two ways. Okay, you could see that Microsoft, because they've acquired these studios, you will see maybe 2 to 3 years in, when it comes to the new gen, we're going to start to see some of the results of these studio acquisitions. So we're going to get releases because they've previewed them already. The question is whether people still carry on wanting to go down the same route with as the previous gen, in terms of, we're going to buy this box, where like say the PS5, and we're going to buy these games, and we're going to bank on Sony releasing these exclusives. I mean, did you see? The end teaser of the Sony conference, God of War Ragnarok. There's no fucking way that game is coming out in 2021.
No.
I mean,
as I said on Twitter, 2021. Yeah.
I mean, yes, we didn't even get a trailer, and you're telling me it's out next year. I mean, the point I'm trying to make is that it takes a while for these exclusives to arrive, and what'll be interesting is whether people buy a PS5 banking on the fact that they're going to see some Sony exclusives and they're going to buy them in the same way and shell out their $60 or $70, or they look at Microsoft, who have this great service, and they think, well, this represents better value for me. So will people, change their way of looking at games fundamentally with this generation, and think that the services route is a more credible and a more affordable option for them in terms of their gaming preferences? That's what I think is going to be interesting.
Yeah, I think the important thing to remember as well is, in terms of who's going to win, etc., etc. The important thing to remember is that both Sony and Xbox will retain the majority of their existing install base, right? I think the thing to talk about is who's going to grow the most on top of how big they already are.
That's a good point.
What's the correct path to take for continued growth? And I think, again, it's no secret. My opinion is I love the subscription models that Microsoft is going down, All Access, Game Pass, just removing a lot of these walls and offering a lot of value to the gamer via all these different services and blah, blah, blah. And Sony, I think, is looking... I'm struggling to see their value proposition. like you buy the box and you get one game a year, one killer game a year.
I think this is it, isn't it? I think there was a recent survey which said that people are playing more games but actually buying less of them, and that's because more people are adopting these services. And this is why I think Sony might struggle in this regard, because I think you hit the nail on the head, Sully, and you kind of summed it up. It's about the model has changed, and it's about growth in terms of like adoption of like these gaming services, because whether Sony like it or not, if they don't adapt to this model, then they could see sales of their exclusives drop off because people don't see the value in them compared to Xbox Game Pass.
Well, that's why I think Microsoft has them like dead to rights. I don't think Sony as a entity have the capacity to do what Microsoft is doing on the scale that they're doing it.
Well, not only that, they haven't put anything in place in order to compete, really.
No, it's like I feel like they know that's the case, which is why they're sticking to their tried and true guns of pushing the games, the traditional generation. We're not going to fuck you around. You know what you're going to get when you come to Sony. It's the games and the traditional generation. And I think they're holding their breath because I think they know that they have just started a game of battleships with Microsoft.
Yeah. Effectively, Sony are pushing all their chips in on the traditional model, and like you say, they're holding their breath and they're crossing their fingers and hoping that people will still go for that model.
I would be shitting kittens.
It's a big risk.
I would be shitting kittens. Like, what if? Again, I'm going to come back to it because I think it's crazy. I think Microsoft are just throwing fucking curveballs, and I think they're starting to stick, and people are starting to realize. But what if Microsoft do decide to just drop a new console every 2 years because All Access has taken off, and Sony get caught flat-footed in a traditional generation mindset? What happens?
Yeah.
Well, that'll be a real problem for them, and I think that's. I think because then you're looking at, Microsoft are going to be pushing this, we've got the most powerful console. And if they've already got the most powerful console, and then 2 years down the line, they drop a console that's like, 50% or 30% more powerful yet again.
And they have the cheapest.
In terms of power, they've got, they've left Sony in the dirt at that point. And can Sony afford to spend the R&D to keep doing refreshes of their consoles? I'm not sure they have.
This is the thing. I don't think they're primed or Sony are in position in order to do an about turn in that regard, because they don't have. Not only do they not have the capacity, they're not a company that thinks that way. Because you've got to remember, at the end of the day, they're a Japanese company, and even though the PlayStation is kind of since the PlayStation 4, it's kind of been developed in the West, they still have to abide by certain, rules or certain methods by which they kind of believe in. And you're asking almost like they're having to change the culture, at least within the gaming division. They would have to adopt a new mentality, and it's whether they're prepared to do that. I don't think they are.
I think
it's like turning an oil tanker, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think like a big issue for them is going to become as well is that Microsoft's kind of like, I don't even want to call it Xbox, I'm just going to call it like Microsoft's ecosystem is getting so broad that you're either going to be a gamer who can play with everybody, or you're a Sony gamer.
Yeah, I mean, I would say one thing: Sony are looking at releasing more games on PC, and it'd be interesting to see whether they follow through on that.
Yeah,
because if they do, that will be a way in which they can invest in other platforms.
Yeah, absolutely, and they need Microsoft. And they need to do that, and they need interconnectivity between the two. It's not enough just to sell the copy. They need to expand their ecosystem.
Yeah, I agree. I think things like cross-platform play, they need to change their attitude towards that, because it's completely stuck in the past. Microsoft have basically said, where we can make it happen, we'll make it happen. But Sony is still like, well, it's game dependent, and they kind of come up with these excuses about they can't control people that aren't in their ecosystem. I was like, for fuck's sake, stop. You're looking at it in the completely wrong way. Gamer wants to play with other people.
Absolutely.
They want to play with their friends on other platforms.
And you know what? Like, the traditional model, in a sense, like we talk about Sony adopting the traditional model, Nintendo very much do that traditional model as well. They're the weakest hardware. They're selling really well. Yeah. But they're also not competing with Microsoft and Sony in traditional sense either, because they're so freaking unique with their console concepts and games.
Exactly.
That's why that traditional model does so well, and why they get away with so I want to say so little. Like, they just give you the copy of the game and that's it. And their online service is so abysmal.
Yeah, it's so much so that I think they've been talking to Microsoft about improving that, haven't they?
True.
They have admitted that they just don't know how to do online because they don't have the skill set, maybe.
Yeah.
But Nintendo, you're absolutely right. Nintendo do things uniquely. Interesting enough, Nintendo, I think the rumour are that there might be a 4K Switch or a new version of the Switch at some point.
With the
it's going to happen, isn't it?
I tell you what,
with that new upscaling technology, that would be incredible.
Yeah.
But I mean, back to Sony, like they are very much like locking horns with Microsoft in a traditional battle that I don't think they're armed to fight.
No, and I don't think Microsoft want to fight that sort of battle anyway with Sony.
No.
They're basically saying, no, we're not going to.
And like let's just entertain the and again, I know I'm ragging on Sony. I think Sony have a good box. They're going to release some really good games. I just want them to offer more.
And they'll sell more consoles this generation. Let's be honest. Whatever.
Yeah. But they probably will. They probably will sell more boxes. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, but I mean, like, what if? Let's entertain the idea. What if Sony have one or two bad exclusives drop from their pedigree studios, maybe back to back, year to year?
Yeah.
2 bad years. What is that?
Well,
that could make or break your traditional approach. Your box is only as good as your 2 games.
That's very true. I mean, they've been known for these quality single player like cinematic games, haven't they? But there is a possibility that could happen. I mean, they did release a couple of dodgy exclusives. Days Gone and was one of them. So there's no guarantee that Sony are necessarily going to release these top tier quality games. What if they feel rushed?
Yeah,
they have to get an exclusive out because suddenly Microsoft are winning the war in terms of their console is just like getting a lot more momentum.
Yeah, and it's hard.
And Sony feel pressured.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it's hard to break or not fulfill the overall value of something like Game Pass. That's always going to be there.
Yeah.
I mean, like
totally.
It's like a NFL. I've watched a couple of NFL documentaries, and like the players, like all of them, will say that they're only as valuable as the performance of their last 3 games. In the NFL, they'll drop and trade like big dollar players just like that because they're only as good as their last 3 games.
That's an interesting way of looking at it. I mean, I don't want to make out as if I've enjoyed like Sony's consoles in the past, but I never feel like I owe them anything. I don't think any gamer should feel that way. They should basically go where the good games are. I mean, I know everyone doesn't think like that, but it will be. I don't want to make out as if like I'm anti-Sony. I'm not. I'm just asking the question like, what if if the whole playing field has changed and Sony basically haven't woken up enough to realise that.
Well, I do get the feeling, and we've said this before. We were saying this a year ago. I get, and I feel it even more now. I get the feeling that Sony are almost being dragged along. They got a ring through their nose, and Microsoft have got a chain on it, and they're dragging them along into the future. Mm-hmm. And Sony are kind of dragging their heels. And I look at something like the PlayStation Plus collection with these 18 games, and maybe they'll add more down the line. I don't know. But I look at something like that, and I see that as a kind of reaction to what Microsoft are doing. I don't think this has come up. People play a lot of these games or not. It's seen as value added. And we keep coming back to this, but Microsoft keeps giving us extra value on top of what we've already got.
Yeah.
And I get this feeling, and some of the mistakes Sony have made recently strike me as being them trying to scrabble to keep up. I feel like they're being left behind. It's not in terms of what they're going to do in terms of sales, not in terms of the fact that they've got the lion's share of the install base, and they will continue to have the lion's share of the install base for some time at least, but in terms of where we're going, who's driving the agenda, who's making people look to the future. And it's not Sony, it's Microsoft.
Exactly, right. I think another thing to consider, just something that came to me, is if the world situation changed even more, because it is relevant. I mean, let's face it, both of them are releasing consoles at a time when, our living situation is unstable. But what I'm saying is if it becomes even more unstable and people don't have enough disposable income, it could very much swing almost completely in Microsoft's favour because they would be offering so much more value. And that could be very relevant. If people haven't got the funds to buy X number of games at this cost, as well as the hardware, it could become, well, I can get that for $299 and I can pay for that, and it's a lot cheaper than buying that.
And
it could be as simple as that.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. But again, what happens if Sony loses their exclusive edge? Like, we know, Joe, you covered that Microsoft's, and Grant, you covered this, that Microsoft have been acquiring all these studios for a long time, so they obviously have the intention of putting killer apps out at some point. How does Sony adjust to combat that? Do they just say that we have the best of the exclusives? Like, what more do they offer?
Well, I think that's what they're going to have to do, because that's the only advantage they've got, really. I mean, install base is a huge advantage. Let's not, take that for granted at all.
The brand is very strong.
They're sitting pretty at the moment.
Yeah, the branding is quite strong.
Yeah. But, I come back to this thing again about, you've got your people there's people out there who will go out and buy an Xbox because it's an Xbox. There's people who go out there, and more people who will go out and buy a PlayStation because it's a PlayStation. You could put a brick with PlayStation on it, people would buy it.
Yeah.
And that's just the reality. But those people make up a very small number of the actual gaming community. And a lot of gamers don't realize this. And I think sometimes we're guilty of this as well. We're in a small group. And what Microsoft understand and what some of the mobile, and I know people think that that's a dirty word, but what the mobile gaming companies understand is that there's a much bigger audience out there. And you don't grow your platform by appealing to the people you always appealed to. It's like, when you're trying to run an election, the way you get elected is to appeal to people who wouldn't have otherwise voted for you. And that's what Microsoft are doing here, it seems to me. It seems that they're looking at the audience, the untapped audience out there. Yeah, and they're trying to come up with ways of bringing them in.
And I think what they've done is they very cleverly created a marketing message which has made them stand out as a real alternative, because they're presenting the opportunity to buy a console in a completely different way, and we're using a model that hasn't been used in the gaming industry, but is already known to people because that's how they buy their mobile phone. So
absolutely, I actually said exactly the same thing the other day.
Yeah, it could be that they know this, so they're kind of hoping that people will recognize that model and think, okay, well, this is an interesting way to buy a new console.
Absolutely.
And I mean, like Joe brought up earlier about who's going to sell the most systems or units this coming generation. And again, I don't think it is about that for Microsoft. I think it's about how many subscriptions can they pull in.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I don't think that they would be necessarily that bothered if Sony outsold them, I don't know, by 50% or whatever.
Yeah,
I think if they say, well, we've got 10 million more Game Pass subscribers, or we've got 30 or 40 million subscriptions.
Yeah, our gaming division's making more than yours. Congratulations.
Exactly.
It's just, all that matters is the dollars, not how you get it.
This is the thing with, just going back to Nintendo, this is the thing with Nintendo. What Nintendo always do is, they never make a loss on their consoles, and they always seem to have... they also do cash rich, Nintendo, because they provide a service where people know exactly what they're going to get. So they will always provide a credible alternative. And I think what Microsoft have realised is that they won't necessarily win the war when it comes to shifting boxes. So that's why they're turning the whole narrative around towards services, because that's where their strength lies.
Absolutely, always has been.
Yeah, and I think again, like, just to quickly touch on Nintendo again, they do something that I don't think can be replicated, like, outside of Nintendo. Like, not in the same way anyway. Like, they regularly capture lightning in a bottle with their games. Yeah. And quite often their systems too.
The way we play games, they look at that as well.
Yeah.
It's like, how can we offer something different to gamers in terms of how to play a game, like the Switch, like the Wii.
Yeah, wasn't it the best-selling game this year was Animal Crossing, and then it's freaking the All Stars 3D collection.
Animal Crossing did something like 11 million copies in a month or something stupid.
It's mad.
I think Nintendo are in a very unique position, though, in as much as when you talk about nostalgia and you talk about, people look back into their childhood, especially in America, not so much in this country, although that's coming a bit more now as people are starting to grow up with Nintendo systems. But they're in a very unique position, and they do something. They're a really interesting company in that sense because on the one hand they're extraordinarily conservative, and you have to drag them screaming and kicking in some directions. But when it comes to their games, in many respects they do take risks and they do try things, and also with the hardware as well. They'll do things. I mean, look at the Wii U. I mean, the Wii U was a stupid idea in some respects, but at least they were trying to do something different. And you've got to kind of admire them for that. They make you pull your hair out. They would if I had any, but they make you pull your hair out at times. But that's part of their charm, and that's I think some of the reason why people love them, because they've got all those things go together. There's that quirkiness, that weirdness, that nostalgia, and it all comes together. And if you look at, and I'm holding it in my hand here, Super Mario 3D All-Stars, and we were talking about this yesterday, Sully, briefly. What they've done with that's really interesting. And I mean, do people care that it's emulation? I don't. I as long as it plays okay, I don't care.
Not really.
3 classic games. And it is different, maybe I would have preferred them to have a service like Microsoft have got, or do some other way of providing these games. But, they do this all the time. They come out of left field and they do something ridiculous and people go, oh, it's Nintendo. Oh, and I want these games. I'll buy them, I don't think Microsoft or Sony could ever really match that. I think they are in a very unique position. I
think what Nintendo... The thing is, Nintendo they've been doing it for years. Nintendo fundamentally understand, the real nuts and bolts of what makes a great video game. And I've said this before, but I think the Mario games have almost perfect mechanics, a lot of them. And it's
my mate
because
goes
they
on
have
about this all the
they
time.
have such a strong understanding of like the rhythm and the flow of a game, Nintendo, and what they offer is based on this understanding that it's all about fun.
Yeah, well, I mean,
it's all about making a game as fun as possible to play.
It's their strike rate that's impressive because, for all the studios they have, they seem to all be on the same freaking page and they seem to all be experimenting so much in so many different directions, yet everything seems to stick. That's kind of amazing.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah. And, the other thing I think with Nintendo as well, and I think this is something that we possibly need to think about at the moment, given that, I don't know, I think it was you I was talking to about this, Grant, that if you look at Nintendo and you look at where we're going with a lot of these video games and you look at, EA, Activision, all these stuff, a lot of these games have become quite po-faced. And,
that's true.
And then you look at Nintendo and they really are. A lot of their games are like a little breath of fresh air. Now, if I'm being honest, they're not entirely to my taste some of the time. But I'm fully aware that that's not the case for a lot of people. A lot of people love their games with an absolute passion. And I can see why, going back to what you said earlier, or just a minute ago about mechanics and all the rest of it. And the fact that you sit down and you play a Nintendo game, and 9 times out of 10, it will just put a bloody great smile on your face, as opposed to playing something
exactly
from Activision.
Right. I said this. So carry on.
So I was going to say, like, every single title they release is wholesome. Even if it's not your taste, it's wholesome, it's true, it's not riddled with microtransactions. Everything about it is crafted in that wholesome manner.
Yeah, and it's not a contrived way. They're doing it in a very sincere way, that because they understand how important it is to give that the player that experience that they're going to find, like Joe said, it puts a smile on their face. I remember when I got an N64 and I put Super Mario 64 in, I just couldn't. I mean, I was absolutely gobsmacked because it was a genuine leap forward in terms of 3D platforming. And I remember sitting there and playing it for 6 hours straight because I just couldn't get off the thing. Because I was literally completely fucking hypnotized by the mechanics of the game. It's amazing.
You were talking to me yesterday about Miyamoto, Grant, and
that's right.
Just when you listen to people talking about him, and he comes in, he's smoking his fag, and he says, let's think about how we can solve this problem, and he thinks up something out of the box.
Yeah.
He's not thinking about how many millions can we make this game? Make from this game? And I understand Nintendo are a business the same as anyone else, and there's businessmen in the company, and they want to make money and they want to grow. But you get the feeling that the game comes first and the monetization comes second.
Yeah.
Rather than the other way round that you get with a lot of companies these days.
It's about the experience, isn't it? It's about creating an experience for people so that the game loop, the game loop becomes compulsive, but not in a way that's like cynical, because with some companies it's about keeping people's attention, but in a very cynical way. But with Nintendo, it feels like it's a sincere, way that they're trying to like pull people in and make their games just fun, I think.
Yeah. It's like we make good games, we'll make money, and that's the way it should be. Make good games, make money, not how can we make a game that will make us money. It's the wrong way round when you do it like that. And I think Nintendo, for the most part, they have their missteps as well. They're not perfect, but for the most part, they get it the right way round.
Just to think about the Wii U that I thought the other day. The Wii U, I think one of the reasons I think it's been well discussed that console didn't sell was because people thought it was an expansion for the Wii, and I think Nintendo messed up the marketing. I do have a slight reservation that Microsoft have confused the message by calling all their bloody consoles almost the same thing. It's like,
don't get me started on that.
I'm just wondering. I hope this isn't an issue. Yeah. Because I don't know if you...
At least a number keeps it simple.
Yeah, I don't know if you know, but in the UK, the old Xbox One S is also available on that new monthly subscription. I'm thinking, who the hell's going to buy that? I think, but you've got a new Xbox Series S, and then you've got a One S. It's like, Microsoft, could you not have come up with some new names?
I think it would be wise if Microsoft were to... I mean, they already discontinued the Series X, but to try and dry up that stock as soon as possible in stores, so that no promotional materials available in stores.
Absolutely.
You only have the two systems in stores at launch.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that would reduce, the confusion, I think.
Sorry, I was just going to quickly say that I agree with Grant. It's confusing now that we add in this next generation, and then they're kind of intermingling a little bit. But when you remove the old generation, I think I do like where they're going with the series of Xbox, because I think that's simple. It's just a Series X and it's a Series S. This one's more powerful. This one's less powerful. Yeah. That's it.
Yeah, I think this is a kind of a glitch for now, because we're moving into a new generation. They're trying to change the way we think about the Xbox.
I think
once those old ones are gone, it's going to be Series S and Series X from now on, I think. It's like if you look at the Elite controller that we were talking about, I think before we started. If you talk about the Elite controller, you've got the Elite series, you've got the Elite controller, the Xbox Elite controller, and the second one was the Elite Series 2. Yeah, and that's where they're going now. They're looking at doing, they're looking at having that naming convention, and I can see that going forward. We'll have the X, the Xbox Series X. Version 2 or X2 or whatever they want to call it. It will be Series S and Series X moving forward, unless they do what they, Microsoft do and decide next time, we don't like that naming convention anymore and we'll change it again. Which I could see happening as well, because it's Microsoft and they do these crazy things. But with the naming, I think that's one thing that could cause problems. Certainly this Christmas. It's not going to be a problem next year.
No,
once those other stocks are gone, I think it's not going to be a problem. Could be a problem this Christmas for some people.
It's just temporarily it might be an issue, but not for very long. I think that's what you guys have said. I think it's just something that, like, it's kind of like as they're moving out of one kind of like way of naming their consoles into a new one, it's like kind of a natural teething problems as you go forward.
Microsoft,
that's going to disappear.
Have always been all over the fucking shop with their naming, so let's just hope they stick to this one. Like the Xbox 360. What the fuck is a 360?
Yeah.
Like,
I know.
Like I think they've always done it because they've always been a number behind the PlayStation. So they've always had to get weird with their naming because they don't want to seem like they're a number behind. I don't know. It's weird.
Well, I tell you what, it's not as bad as AMD, who seem to go back and forth when it comes to numbers. Their Radeon went up to 7,000, then they went back to 200, and it was like, what the hell?
That's fucked.
Yeah.
I'm not buying a 200. It's worse than the previous gen.
Yeah, I know. Oh well.
The other thing for me, though, with Microsoft, and I think this might be a problem with Sony to a lesser degree as well, is with these SSDs. I think if you're looking at you're talking about Gen 4 SSDs in these machines. Sony's is faster. We know that already. Whether that transpires into real world performance, we'll have to wait and see, and wait until Digital Foundry get hold of them. But both of them are going to have extremely expensive expansions. But I actually worry a little bit more for Microsoft, because I think with Sony, that it's not proprietary, you're going to see different companies will provide them, and you're going to see different prices, and you may see prices coming down because of competition. You're not going to see that with Microsoft, because they're all coming from Seagate. 1 terabyte at launch.
I didn't realize that.
If you can get one, hopefully. But they're proprietary, and people are talking like, $250 for the expansions, that's going to be the case initially for PlayStation 5 as well. But, as I say, with the competition, it might come down. But it worries me that this could be like the PS Vita. We saw that the PS Vita with the expansions on that held back sales of the console. And so that worries me a little bit with the Xbox.
So I
especially with the S initially.
Yeah, I'm a little less worried about that, just because, what's to stop Microsoft releasing just another variant of the Series X with like a terabyte inside in a year from now,
Sorry, it has got 1 terabyte already, isn't
Sorry,
it?
two. My bad. 2 terabytes then. Yeah. Just another variant of system. It costs you an extra $50 or $100 and you get the 2 terabyte. They've done that a bunch of times with the 360 and the Xbox One.
Yeah, Sony did that, didn't they, with the PS4?
Yeah.
They released the PS4 1 terabyte instead of 500 gigs.
To me,
do you remember the 360 when it came out without a hard drive and most of the games required one?
To me, to me, these memory cards are like kind of a stopgap solution for now, because they're just trying to get these systems out the door at the lowest possible price, yet they know people will still want to increase the storage. Whereas, a year from now, when maybe the storage is being produced a little bit cheaper, maybe they can release another variant for the next holiday season. You get the 2 terabyte Xbox Series X for $50 more or $100 more, whatever. I think you're 100% right. Buying these SSD memory cards is going to be horribly expensive, and I agree, more so for Microsoft, but I don't think it's a long-term issue. It's probably for the next year to 18 months.
No, I agree.
Yeah, another issue for Sony, and Joe, you pointed this out obviously at the very beginning when we knew the PS5 specs, and I jokingly said it wasn't an issue, but it is an issue, and it's the size of that SSD. It's only 825 gig, the Sony one, and that will be an issue. Especially because it's very proprietary, and like you say, Jay, if it becomes, we don't want a situation like with the Vita where you're stuck with only a very small selection of upgrade options, and we're not going to see them for a while anyway, are we?
Well, that was gonna be my thing with the PlayStation 5. I don't know what the availability is going to be on the Xbox, but we don't even know if there's any drives that are going to work with the PlayStation 5 yet. They say they're going to release a list of drives that are going to work with the PlayStation 5. Yeah. But I don't think they've released it yet. And, how far away from launch?
No, I think as well, I mean, you consider the fact that games are getting bigger and bigger in terms of installs. I mean, look at Call of Duty. That's like nearly 150 gig now. So God knows what the new Black Ops game will be. But just generally, because of the higher textures, games are going to be, at least getting to 100 gig, I would have said, in terms of, the capacity. And so that means how many are you going to be able to put on the PS5 hard drive? Because that will annoy some people. I mean, I know it's not something that's going to affect everyone, but it will be an issue.
It depends on your approach. I mean, I would say it's going to be more of an issue for me, because I like to have all my games there and to be able to just play them when I want them. I don't like this idea of installing and uninstalling, because I dip in and out of games. But for somebody more like you, Grant, who will play a game for a long time and maybe then delete it and put another one in, I don't think it's such an issue.
Well, that's
but
what
certainly
I used
for me,
to do.
if I'm doing YouTube stuff, it's a pain in the ass, because I have to sit and wait for the bloody game to download before I can do some footage, record some footage, whatever. So I do think it will depend on your personal use case to some degree.
I think you're right, and I think, to be honest, that is the way I used to do things with PS4. But that's mainly because it took a long time for the PS4 to accept external hard drives. Yeah. And I remember when they did, it was like a relief, because it meant I could have more options in terms of games installed. But yeah, I did used to do that with the PS4. but partly because I was restricted to the 500 gig hard drive. On PC, I've got multiple SSDs, so I can have about 20 games installed. And I have gotten to that stage where I like to have dip in and out of different games, but I don't think, as like I said, I don't think it's going to be a widespread issue, but it might be after say like a couple of years of having the console, when there's more games for people to be able to choose from.
I think there's two things. I think initially when you first get the consoles at launch, I think you're probably going to find these drives are either going to be hard to come by or impossible to come by. In which case, it could be an issue for some people. If someone's going out and they're getting all the PlayStation launch games, or if someone's getting PlayStation Plus collection and they want to install them all, they're not going to be able to. That kind of thing. Similar sort of thing with Xbox. With the backwards compatibility. Okay, look, if with the backwards compatible games on both consoles, you can use an external hard drive for those. So that's not such a big issue. Okay, they're not going to load as fast, but then they're going to load at the speed that they currently do. So big deal, not a problem.
Yeah, it's not really much of a problem, is it? I mean, the other thing is how much does the OS take up as well? Because that cuts away a portion of your availability on an SSD.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that'll be interesting to see on both consoles. See how much the OS takes up.
Yeah.
But the other thing for me though is as you say down the line is when you start getting a large library of the new games, and hopefully by the time that comes on tap, if you like, 2 years down the line, which is probably what we're looking at. Let's be honest, with new consoles, it's usually about 2 years down the line before we start seeing the real generational leap in terms of games. By then, I'm hoping that Seagate will be putting out a 2 terabyte, maybe a 4 terabyte SSD for the Xbox, and we'll see some of the manufacturers putting out Gen 4 SSDs for the PlayStation, or at least SSDs that will work with the PlayStation. And hopefully, the prices will come down. Obviously, if we're having problems, if COVID carries on, and we're having problems with manufacturing. Then we could see the prices stay or even start to go up, and then that becomes a problem again. So I don't know. It's an interesting one, but
I think the cost will be an issue. I mean, I bought a PCIe 4 compatible SSD for my PC, and that was a 1 terabyte for £100. And I think how much they charge for these PCIe 4.0 compatible drives is going to be an issue, because it's all part of the affordability of the console. So, it's all part of if we're in a situation where the pandemic puts a further strain on people's finances, then, it's another factor to consider, isn't it?
Absolutely. So now, I mean, I think we've covered a lot of ground here, and I'm just going to throw out one last thing. And I think we've touched on this a little bit already, well, quite a bit already. But I just wanted to ask you two what you think before we finish up. Who out of the two consoles, and assuming we'll be able to get them, who out of the two consoles do you think is going to do better this Christmas, and which variant do you think will do better? And then, where do you see them in maybe 2-5 years' time? So who wants to go first on that one?
I'll go first, I guess. In terms of I think holiday or first quarter or the end of the rest of this financial year after launch, I think whoever can produce the most will sell the best.
Yeah, I agree.
That's a fair point. I mean, generally, if it wasn't an issue of, it is going to be an issue of production, let's be honest, and I think you've raised an important point there, Sully, but generally, I think this isn't exactly a shocking opinion, but I think Sony will probably, in the long run, sell more boxes, but I think Microsoft will surprise people with the Xbox. I think the Xbox will do a lot better than the Xbox One
did
in terms of the previous gen sales. And I think that's because I think a lot of people will be very attracted by the Xbox All Access way of buying the console. So I think it will be closer than people think. I think it won't be a lot different from the previous gen, but I think Microsoft will most definitely win the services battle, because let's face it, they're pretty much the only one who's offering a service of note.
There's Stadia.
So
oh yeah, sorry, Stadia. Yeah, how could I forget that?
So
quite easily, apparently.
Another angle to maybe put it is maybe not who's going to sell the most boxes, but who's going to make the most money over this generation.
Yeah, and I think that could be a lot more interesting, actually. I think that's really going to be where it's going to be something that we should keep an eye on and look at that, and if we can, I mean, because Microsoft tend to play things a bit close to their chest, and Sony will be telling us how well they're doing up until the point at which maybe they're not doing so well, in which case they might stop telling us.
But this is the thing, you see, because it's not just about Microsoft versus Sony in the console arena, because Microsoft are giving Xbox Game Pass to PC owners, so it is going to be about who's going to make the most money, and Microsoft have a two-pronged approach there, because all their first-party exclusives will be available on Xbox and PC, and Game Pass is available on 2 platforms, so they have an advantage
for me,
there already.
It's a bit like, the gamers out there are going on about console war and stuff, and I almost think we're in a post-console war situation. I mean, Microsoft and Sony might be fighting battles, but they're if you take an analogy of boxers, they might both be boxing, but they're in different rings.
Yeah, this is the thing, isn't it? I think Sony need to. We've touched on it earlier. I think Sony need to seriously look at putting more games out on PC, because I think it's there that they will be able to generate more revenue, and then subsequently they'll be able to compete with Microsoft, at least in that arena. They won't be able to compete on the same services front, but I think they need to look seriously at being able to sell games on more than one platform effectively.
It's kind of,
and it's not a surprise that they're doing this already and they're dipping their toe in, and I think we will see more of it. I think it's inevitable, and Sony game players may not like it, but let's not forget, I remember when Quantum Break came out on PC and Xbox gamers were getting up in arms about it. And I made a video even as long ago as that and said, Microsoft are looking to expand their services. They're looking to expand where they're offering their games. It was obvious even then. And I think Sony are now just about starting to take a look and think, well, there's a lot more revenue to be had here. And why would they leave revenue on the table? Why would they?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, they've got great games. There's another ready market out there that want to play them. Why would they not sell them to them? Of course they will. Maybe there'll be a time differential, unlike with Microsoft who are doing it day and date, and they may take a different approach in that sense.
That's the difference. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how much that applies.
I also think, and I think this would help Sony. I think if they wanted to compete on a service level, I think if they made their games day and date on PlayStation Now or whatever it's called, they're basically their Xbox Game Pass service, the streaming app.
Yeah.
I think if they made their games day and date, I don't think they'll want to, but I think if they did, then their service would look a lot more like Game Pass and maybe look a lot more a lot more attractive to a lot more people. Whereas at the moment, I think it's quite a niche service for now, anyway.
I know I've said a bunch of times I don't think Sony has the capacity to compete with the services. I mean, not to the same degree that Microsoft is doing with like Game Pass and Smart Delivery and like xCloud and all that kind of stuff. I just don't think they do. But I mean, they could certainly offer a variant of Game Pass, like the very more traditional route of you just download the game onto your system and away you go.
Yeah.
And like Microsoft got all these publishers and developers to release games on Game Pass. There's no reason Sony can't do the same.
There's no reason why at all.
No,
absolutely. And it could be that if Microsoft end up generating huge momentum with Game Pass in terms of sales, Sony might be forced to completely adapt PlayStation Now to make it more of a true competitor to Game Pass. Like you said, Joe, they might change their tune when it comes to putting their exclusives on there as well.
I think they will. Ultimately, I think they will. Ultimately, I think that's exactly where we're heading. I think Sony will do that because, again, they'll see it as a way of keeping themselves in the market and of making money. And if the model pans out for Microsoft, of course Sony are going to do it. It's that same argument, isn't it?
Yeah.
If it's money, if it gets people on their platform and it gets more people using the platform and paying them a regular service fee, of course they're going to do it.
No, I was going to say, I mean, we've all been sitting here kind of like giving Sony a good lick, but I mean, who's to say that they're not just being overly cautious to see, maybe to let Microsoft tread the water first?
Well, yeah, I think there's a certain amount of truth in that as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I don't think for this thing about the console war, and we can be critical about Sony, but there's lots of good things about Sony as well. Let's be honest.
Well, yeah, high quality single player games in PS3. You can't knock what they're good at.
Yeah,
absolutely.
They're very good at it.
And they're not. If we go back to where are they going to be? Where in 2 years? Where are they going to be in 5 years? This Christmas, if they've got enough available, they'll outsell Xbox probably by a considerable margin. Certainly, on the boxes, they'll sell their games. Any Demon Souls and games like that will sell like hotcakes. And then 2 years down the line, look, as long as we don't get that scenario that Sully was talking about earlier, and they drop the ball several times, which could be a disaster for them. But then that could be a disaster for Nintendo. It could be to a lesser extent a disaster for Nintendo too. But as long as they don't do that, in 2 years' time, they'll still be selling decent numbers, and they'll still be looking ahead to then maybe their next console by that set stage and whatnot. Microsoft could, as you say, Sully, put a spanner in the works by doing a mid-gen refresh, but you can bet your bottom dollar. I know we've said that Sony may not be able to compete on that, but they did a mid-gen refresh before, and they actually did it before Microsoft. Their PlayStation 4 Pro was out a year before the Xbox One X, so they can refresh.
But they always do it to a certain extent, don't they? Because they find a cheaper manufacturing process. They end up releasing slim models or models with slightly big hard drives. So whatever happens, we are going to see, a slightly different models further down the line anyway. But it's a question of whether how much different they are, whether they're sort of like we've said, whether it becomes a case of every 2 years we're getting an upgrade.
Absolutely. But I don't see either of them going anywhere really. I think the market's going to change. I think the landscape's going to alter.
Yeah.
But I don't think either of them. You hear fanboys going, Microsoft are done. They're finished. And then you have an Xbox fanboy. Sony are finished. It's bollocks. Neither of them are finished. Yeah. Both of them are here for the long haul. Both of them are looking to keep themselves established in the market. They may be looking at slightly different markets. But I don't see them going anywhere, and I think that's a great thing for us. I think they're both going to be putting out some good games. You've heard me before. I've got my problems with modern gaming. I think too much microtransactions, too many games as service. I haven't got a problem with services. I've got a problem with games as a service.
Yeah.
But I think they'll be here. Unless an asteroid hits the Earth, I think they'll both be here and they'll both be sitting pretty and both be selling well in 5 years' time. I really don't.
I think they all offer something that's different. So there's for us as gamers, there's a lot of choice, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, and I for one, I love my PC. And I've pre-ordered a PlayStation 5, and I'm looking forward to their exclusives. And if I can, I'll pre-order an Xbox. Even though I tell everyone else you shouldn't pre-order and you should wait for 6 months.
Yeah, I don't pre-order games or anything, but consoles. Yeah, that's about the only thing I do.
The sensible among us will wait and see how the hardware pans out and all the rest of it. But I think they're both going to be great consoles. I think Nintendo will give us a new console probably next year, and that'll probably be great in its own way as well. And, it's all good. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah.
But, I think, unless you guys have got anything to add, I think we're pretty much done. Yeah. Did you want to say anything extra, Sully or Grant?
No, I think I've gotten lost in my own dribble. So I think that's about it.
I think I'm all talked out now. I think I'm done. Yeah.
All right then. In that case, I'm gonna finish up. You guys want to tell us where we can find you before I do that? Do you want to go first, Grant?
Okay. So you can find me on Twitter at Stories for Games. I'm on YouTube, youtube.com. I think it's /C/Stories for Games. You can please subscribe to my channel. I'm getting close to 200 subs. And that's my pitch.
You shill.
Yeah, that's me.
And Sully?
You can find me on Instagram at yesterday's tech, where you'll find me balls deep in a whole bunch of the modding scene, predominantly with Game Boys and custom artwork and all that kind of stuff. So come check us out.
Yeah, and you should definitely check that out. You'd be really pleased if you had one of their special editions of the Game Boy. I've seen the pictures. I haven't seen one yet, but I might have to have a word with you about getting hold of one of them, Sully.
Yeah, absolutely.
And as Grant says, check out his channel as well. And for now, I'm done, and I'm going to go and grab myself a cup of tea, and I'll speak to you guys in the next one. Bye.